Monsieur Michael, it's an honor to be with you.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I'm so happy to meet you, especially on the eve of your, not the eve of your 83rd birthday, which is coming next month. Which is far away.
Yes.
And you don't look 83, you look like 50.
Well, thank you.
What is the secret, Monsignor?
I swim a lot. That's part of it.
I see.
And being in the Caribbean for 51 years is all part of it. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, really?
And I came here when I was 31 years old. The Bishop of the Virgin Islands, a Redemptorist, invited me to study, so I became the first diocesan priest. He ordained me in Brooklyn, so the family could come, and then I traveled. And out of the 51 years, I've been on St. Croix for 45. And in this parish, I was pastor for 38 years.
Oh my God.
So it's been a blessing. And then 5 years in St. Thomas, where I met Bishop Jerome, and 1 year in Trinidad and Tobago.
Interesting.
Yes.
Tell us about your parkour. You went to the seminary in New York?
Not in New York. No, I always felt the Lord calling me to be a priest, but for some reason or other, you just don't move out. In fact, to be perfectly honest, my mother and father separated, and my two brothers and I went into homes, and the nuns, the brothers and the priests impressed me. I was an altar server, and I wanted to be a priest, but there were many priests in Brooklyn, so they were very, very particular. So I went into the Marine Corps for 3 years, and when I got out, I still felt the hound of heaven calling me, and the providence of God brought me to meet Bishop Harper, who was from Brooklyn, and he was the prelate of the Virgin Islands. It was a prelature, not a diocese yet. It became a diocese in 1977. And he was ordained the prelate as a bishop in 1960, and I met him in 1962. And so after the meeting, he told me to go. I went to St. John's University in Queens, New York, and take some Latin and philosophy. And in 1963, I went to the seminary. I was older than most of the students. I was 24 and a half. Most of them were 17, 18, and 19, I went to St. Mary's College in Kentucky. It was a place for special students, lots of Latin. I was there for 3 years. And then he asked me to go to St. Mary's in Baltimore, Maryland. And that's where I had my theology. And in 1970, on June 6th, he invited several priests from the Virgin Islands to come up to Brooklyn. And the Basilica of Our Lady of Perpetual Help was their headquarters, the Redemptorists. So with my family and friends, he ordained me the first priest of the prelature of the Virgin Islands. And I came here 3 weeks later, and I was always attracted to this church. It was a little chapel in the middle of a sugarcane field. And by the grace of God, he separated this chapel from the main church in Christiansted and made it a parish and made me the first pastor. And so for 19 years, we built it up. I went to St. Thomas, a year in Trinidad. Then I came back for another 19 years. And then I was 75 going on 76. And 5 priests were ordained for the Virgin Islands, so I knew it was time to step down. But I live here. I'm in residence. My apartment is on the bottom floor. And I help out at the different parishes when they need it. And Father Louis took over from me. And now I'm just here doing the best that I can, swimming as often as I can to keep in shape.
You really have a good shape.
Well, thank you. I work hard on it.
I didn't know swimming was such an important exercise.
Well, I used to play tennis, and then after a while I went to the gym. That was too boring. But we're surrounded by the sea, and so often we don't take advantage. So I grew up in Brooklyn and Queens, next to a beach, and that's where I learned to swim. So I do swim, and it is a total exercise, body, mind, soul, and spirit. That's where I pray. That's where, when I'm swimming, the Lord gives me some wisdom and thoughts, problem solving. It's not empty. It's very therapeutic. Very therapeutic, and the exercise is very good too.
And so honored to be with the first incarnated priest of the Diocese of Thomas.
Yes. We were called the prelature of the Virgin Islands.
It was not the diocese.
Right. But in 1977, we became the Diocese of St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands.
Okay.
Normally, the diocese takes the name from the capital.
That's true.
So we thought it would be Charlotte Amalia, which is the capital of St. Thomas, but they made it Diocese of St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, and that's the way it is. Of course, people on St. Croix say, what about us?
Exactly. So that was 1977. That
Yes.
was under the pontificate of Pope Paul VI.
Yes, yes,
Interesting.
yes, yes. Right.
Wow.
Yeah, let's see.
Just before Pope John Paul II.
Yes, just the Vatican Council,
Yes.
Paul VI took over,
Yeah.
and he was here, 77, and in 79, I think, for John
Pope John
Paul
Paul
II,
II.
yeah, and, then, of course, after him, Benedict, and then Francis.
Interesting. Thank you about
Yeah.
this summary you've given to us about yourself, your life, and it's quite inspiring.
Thank you very much.
So let's go to the Diocese of St. Thomas.
Yeah.
Being the first priest incarnated in this diocese, you have a lot of experience. Could you tell us the jurisdiction in summary, the different islands?
Yeah, okay. Well, the Virgin Islands has a very interesting history. It belonged to Trinidad at one time, back 150 years ago, when it was very small, and Port of Spain was like the mother church.
Okay.
And then it went to Roseau and Dominica for a while, and then to San Juan in Puerto Rico. So during the Second Vatican Council, Bishop Harper met with the Archbishop of Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And the Washington, D.C. was an archdiocese, but it did not have any suffragan sees. And even though Washington is a good 2,000 less miles away,
Yeah.
the bishop asked if we could belong to,
An ecclesiastical
yeah, and we left San Juan, Puerto Rico, and we became the suffragan see of the Archdiocese of Washington in D.C. And so Bishop Harper worked that out through the when he met Archbishop there during the Vatican Council, and so that's how we are the suffragan see and the only suffragan of the Archdiocese of Washington.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, and when Bishop Bavard retired, it was the Archbishop,
Okay.
Wilton Gregory, who
Yeah.
then took over and made Bishop Jerome his delegate, and then by the grace of God, he was eventually asked to become Archbishop.
That takes me to my next question. Bishop Jerome. Being the first incarnated priest of this diocese, you should have unarguably known Bishop Jerome, who was ordained in 1989. No, 1990. He was ordained.
Yes,
a priest.
1990.
So tell us, prior to 1990, did you have a relationship, not cordial, did you have a relationship with Bishop? Tell us about your experience with the then Father Jerome. I think he was a seminarian before he was ordained.
Yes,
Could
yes.
you?
Well, I was ordained in 70,
Okay.
and there were no ordinations for 15 years because the Redemptorist Fathers,
Yes.
they took care of the Virgin Islands as well as the British Virgin Islands, Antigua, St. Kitts, Montserrat, and Dominica was Redemptorist.
Redemptorist
Only
Fathers.
later on did the SVDs come to Antigua, and little by little we began to ordain priests. 85, 86, 88, and then in 1989 we had a severe hurricane, Hugo, and Bishop O'Malley invited a few people to come and help. And one of those persons was Jerome Fugio. So I was the rector and the vicar general at the time, and we welcomed him at the cathedral.
Okay.
And he helped along.
As a lay person.
Yes, as a lay person. He came during the summer of, the hurricane was September the 17th, so he probably came in October. In any event, no, I think it was early, but that's beside the point. It was during 89.
Okay.
One of the interesting things is that one day, Father Bernie and I were going out to lunch,
Okay.
and he was walking in the community with his African garb,
Okay.
very ceremonious.
Like this one.
Yes, not just one with the
With a cap.
cap, yeah. And I saw him. I said, "Listen, we're going to lunch. Would you like to join us?" He said, "Sure." And during the lunch, he said, "Today is my birthday."
Oh, what a coincidence.
Yeah, and then we could see why he was dressed up. And
It's such a ceremonial attire.
Well, as I got to know him, and I found out that he did have all his theology, I said, "Well, haven't you considered the priesthood? He said, well, yes. I said, well, we need you, you know. And then I mentioned it to Bishop O'Malley, who already knew. But by saying something to Bishop O'Malley, then O'Malley began to talk with Bishop Jerome, the seminarian, and then as he gives his testimony, because of my encouragement, he said yes to Bishop O'Malley. And because he had all his studies, we put him on the fast track. Ordained him a deacon in June of 1990, and 3 months later, on September 29th, 19...
Deacon 1989?
No, it was 1990.
Oh, 1990, everything took place.
Yeah, so because he came in 89, and it was only in early 90 that we began to talk seriously
about vocation.
And then when he said yes, and the bishop said yes, we chose June for his ordination to the diaconate, 1990, and September for his ordination to the priesthood.
Wow, interesting. Could you recall the ordination?
Oh yes, I preached at his first mass.
Oh,
so
exceptional.
I mean, it was wonderful. I mean, he was filled with so much joy. With the choir was great. It was, you know, wonderful for the church in the Virgin Islands because we had very few priests.
So that was 15 years later.
Well, no, that would be 20 years later after my
ordination.
I was 70. This would have been 90.
So he was the second priest.
No, we would have had a priest that's now a bishop in Paraguay, and then we had Jose Herrera, who was in New Mexico, and then we had George Franklin and Elliot Thomas, and then I think he came in after that. So with Bishop O'Malley, we started having ordinations almost every year. It was very good. And then it stopped for a while, then it picked up, and we just had one last year. Andrew was ordained a priest. He's in Rome studying right now. But we're looking for a priest, and we're happy to have the priest from Cameroon, and like I mentioned before, with the charismatic renewal and coming under a new anointing of the Holy Spirit, I wanted to go to Africa, I wanted to preach, and so we got a Caribbean service team together, and I received a phone call from one of the, they call them the White Fathers, the missionaries of Africa. He was from Ghana. And Father Tom Forrest, who was in charge of the renewal, a very good friend of Cardinal Sunes, he gave him my phone number. So in December of 1981, he called me, and he told me, you know, Ghana was going through problems. Remember the Stalin came in charge. There was a drought. There was a curfew, and we arranged for 4 of us to go down in August of 1982. We arrived in Accra, went to Kumasi, and we stayed a month. And what he did is, for 3 weeks, he would bring people in from the different parts of Ghana for a week. We call it the Life of the Spirit Seminar. And somehow, some way, by the grace of God, with broken down transportation, with the curfew, they all made it. And then they went home, and at the end of the month, we came back. And then in 1984, I went back, and that's when I met a seminarian, and I talked about the Virgin Islands, and he was eventually ordained for us. His name was Simon Obang. He was in the military for many years now. I went back in 86. In 88, I went to East Africa. I went back in 92, 95. I've been very good friends with Cardinal Turkson because he worked with me in 1988 when he was studying in Rome. And then he came back during the summer of 1989 and even was in Hurricane Hugo. So he experienced a hurricane. So he while he was in Rome, later on, I was in Malta at the time doing some evangelization studies. He was made the Archbishop of Cape Coast, the Primatial See of Ghana. And eventually he was made a cardinal, and John Paul called him over to Rome. And he
Church of Justice and Peace Commission.
Right. And he serves very well as he served Pope Francis. So, you know,
so you've had a lot of African experience.
Yes, I like I said, I traveled there 7 times to preach. 7 times in Ghana, and then twice to Uganda and Kenya, and then once to Zimbabwe and Botswana. All part of, you know, the missionaries calling you. You go for a week or 2, a month, 5 weeks, 6 weeks during the summer times. I was the only parish priest in this parish for 25 years, so you had to work it out to get away and come back. But in those days, priests were available to come in and help out. Today, it's more difficult to bring someone in, so and many parishes don't have two priests, they only have one. In fact, some parishes are in charge of 2 or 3 churches.
Some places have 2 or 3 parishes.
Yeah.
I'm very interested about your experience in Africa.
Mm.
What really taught you about the African people, the culture?
Well, Ghana, of course,
Yes.
is where I went before a good 5 times before I went anywhere else. And I was just, in fact, one of the children in Ghana, the father was in the, I became his godfather, and he calls him Michael Kosak.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he gave him my name, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's now in Tampa, Florida. He's married. He went to Ave Maria University there, and they just had their 3rd or 4th child. He and his wife, Chris. But I was always amazed with Ghana.
Yes.
I got to know many. In fact, Anthony, I brought him here. He stayed with my family in New York. He stayed here on Barron Spot Hill. We talked about communications, and he became the leader, and he's still the leader in Ghana. And lots of mail went back and forth. The Archbishop Sarpong from Kumasi,
Yes.
got to know him. Well, he was Bishop Sarpong, and then it became an archdiocese and became the Archbishop.
Yes.
I think he's retired now. In fact, when I went to Ghana, there were only 9 dioceses.
Then.
There are 18 today.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Kofarito wasn't a diocese yet.
Okay.
And it became a diocese a year or 2 later. And then that priest from Kofarito eventually became a bishop, and he's the Archbishop of Accra right now, you know. And it's a lot of history because the former Bishop of Accra was from Dominica in the West Indies. So they brought him here, and they separated Dominica from Antigua and the other islands. He became the bishop for a while before he went back to Ghana with the community that he founded, and that's where he died. Yeah. Lots of history as it extends itself.
So you enjoyed your pastoral mission activity?
That was it. In those days, it kept me alive. See, when you're in the same parish for 19 years and then for another 19, you can't get stale. And so all of this in and out, up, down, really kept me alive, and I kept the parish alive all these years because of this initiative, because of the special anointing.
Yes.
And you know, when you go and give, you get a lot more
You get
back.
more.
So it
was
was wonderful.
So tell me your experience in Uganda. You were in Uganda too?
Yes, yeah, we went to Sister Miriam. She was a Franciscan and also a medical doctor, and she was in charge of renewal, along with Father Dupre, who was from Belgium.
Yes.
And they invited us, and so part of the Caribbean service team went there, and we preached in Accra, and then we went to the seminary, and then over to 1 or 2 other cities. So at one of the big sessions, Simon Peter Opera, he's in the...
He's called Simon Peter.
Simon Peter, yeah. Opera. He's living right here, he's in the rectory, I'm sure you're going to meet him later.
Okay.
I met him, and he eventually came, and he went to Trinidad for a few years. He went to Mount St. Mary's in Maryland, and he was ordained a priest for us in 1993. Yeah. So, you know, those 2 men came to the Virgin Islands. And Father Jerome had been the first Cameroonian here.
Yeah.
And then after he, others came. Right now, I think we have 5 or 6
Speak to
Cameroonians.
me about the experience with. Let's begin with African priests.
Yeah.
As a vicar general, you facilitated in bringing them here.
Yes. And also the vocation director.
Oh, you were the vocation.
Because I was the only diocesan priest.
Exactly.
I had many titles, you know, communications, marriage encounter, the diaconate. I began the diaconate in 1981.
The permanent diaconate.
Permanent diaconate. We have ordained since 1984 55 men.
Interesting.
All right. Now, more than half have died, and another third are retired. So we have very few now. But we have a program going on to get more. But the point is, because I was the only diocesan priest, I was asked to head up many of these situations. So, beginning, you know, with Father Simon Peter and Father Obeng, they were assistants, and then Father Jerome came in, and you know, little by little, he got involved as the vicar of clergy, the Bishop of Vard, and start just moving around, going to meetings, and little by little building the diocese up with the bishop. In 2013, I resigned as the Vicar General because I was going to retire the following year, and I went to Rome for a sabbatical. And Monsignor Jerome now,
Yeah.
he took over, and he was the right hand to Bishop Lavar right through the years, and right to the present day when we see what has happened, the blessings that we experience. You know.
So you've worked with about 3 or 4 bishops. Did you work with Bishop O'Malley?
First, Bishop Harper, the one who ordained me,
Okay.
and then O'Malley.
Was he the first bishop?
Yes.
Okay.
He was the prelate in
Brilliant.
1960, and then in 1977 he became
The first bishop.
and then he retired in 1985 when he was 25 years a bishop.
Bishop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then Bishop O'Malley came. He was only 39 years old.
Oh, young
He came,
bishop.
yeah, but he was big with the Spanish ministry
Okay.
in Washington, and also with people like Monsignor Bishop Jerome.
Yeah, that was when
came
he met him.
and helped him. You know, with the French, he spoke French well enough,
Okay.
and then he invited him to the Virgin Islands. You know, and then after Bishop, we got our own local bishop, we got Bishop Elliot Thomas,
Oh.
and he was here as bishop for about 6 years, and he became a priest at 59.
Oh, wow.
He went to the seminary at 59,
Can you imagine?
and
Almost
they made him a
60.
bishop 6 years later. So he was the ordinary for 6-7 years, and then Bishop Murray, a Jesuit, he came in from the States as a coadjutor, and then he became the bishop until 2007.
Okay.
And then in 2008, Bishop Lavar became our 5th bishop,
Okay.
and he retired in August of last year, and then in April, Monsignor Jerome Fugio was anointed and ordained as our 6th bishop.
Tell me about the announcement. How did you feel when that announcement was
Well, I
made?
kind of expected it.
Oh, you expected it already?
Because he had been so involved.
Okay.
He was the delegate. In fact, I even wanted him to be named an auxiliary bishop 2 years before, because Bishop Lavar was getting older, and I said it would be, not auxiliary, coadjutor,
Yes.
because I wanted the diocese just to go into the hands of someone who's here and not a newcomer coming in and we have to start from the
Exactly.
beginning.
Transition.
And that's what happened. So he, 32 years, he knows the diocese very well. He knows our needs.
Yeah.
Although he did spend the entire 32 years in St. Thomas,
Okay.
but
He used to come back and forth.
So, and you could see, you saw his booklet, right?
Yes.
You saw how it was done. It's so
Exactly.
beautiful, huh?
Beautiful,
I-
well organized.
Oh, I love it, I love it. I've written 1 or 2 books myself,
Okay.
but when I saw that and how well it was put together with the letters, the
Yeah.
photographs,
Oh,
with the reflections, with the
Exactly.
ads, it was great, it was great.
tell us more about the 2 books you've written.
Well, like I said, when I was in the home for boys,
Yeah.
we were called homeboys,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
Say that.
And I don't know about Africa, but maybe everybody would know. Today, the word homeboy means a friend or someone living in your neighborhood.
Okay.
So he's my homeboy,
Oh,
But back in my day, it was because we were in this particular institution.
okay.
So the name of my book, and I'll give you a copy, is Journey of a Homeboy. Okay? So what I did, when I was ordained a priest, I didn't even have a telephone right away, very little communication.
Okay.
So I stopped writing a Christmas letter every year, because I don't want sending Christmas cards, I just say, love Michael. There was always a letter. I did that for 50 years.
Oh, wow.
So in 2007, I said, why reinvent the wheel? I took the letters,
Yes.
put it together, and then I reflected on each one to add commentary, and a black and white book. That was in 2007. But I was celebrating my 50th anniversary last year, and I found another publisher to give it another look. Color, and
pictures.
many more pictures, the island. So, and then I added in the next 12 years, from 2008 to 2020, and so I published it. So many people who got the first book have most of it, but the second book is designed totally different with many more photographs. And it was a labor of love. I was grateful,
Yes.
and the person who helped me, the publisher in New York, he was very good because with the pandemic,
Yes.
things had to close down. I had a lot of time. We were on the phone constantly for hours, back and forth, scanning, underlining things, proofreading.
Oh,
And finally, the book was published in time for my 50th anniversary.
oh, congratulations.
Well, thank you for asking me those questions about myself, but we're here for the bishop.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So the bishop was consecrated on April 17th, 2021. It was a wonderful occasion. So you preached in his first mass.
yeah, that would be 1990.
Could you recall what you said in summary?
Well, it was just, see, I was leaving for Trinidad to work at the seminary
Oh,
the following week.
I see.
So I wanted to be there with him for that last one because we journeyed together. And, you know, for the priesthood, I think, because I'm going back to 1990, you know, I realized it was a spirit-filled event. It was great for the cathedral, great for the diocese. And so the Mass went beautiful. But then I moved on to Trinidad for 2 years. Then I came back to the cathedral for another 3 years. He worked with me.
Okay.
And then I was reassigned back here. We had another hurricane called Hurricane Marilyn.
Oh my
It
God.
was devastation. So the bishop asked me to come over and rebuild.
Okay.
And I've been here ever since.
So he, as a young priest, he worked with you.
Yeah, oh yes. We worked together for 5 years.
Could you tell us about the experience working with him?
Well, in the very beginning, as a parochial vicar, you know, celebrating Mass, and I could see his gifts beginning to emerge. The one that I found very much interesting over the years, not only just in the beginning, I always thought he could work in a nunciature very easily.
Okay.
You know, just the way he dealt with things, his patience, his humor, and the kind of administration you need for that. I saw that as his gift, that he could be a nuncio.
Oh,
Because
really?
you know, those bishops are trained very specially
Yes.
as they go into other cultures and other places. They only spend 5 years there before they go somewhere else.
Exactly.
But they have to have a certain temperament to deal with it. So I'm dealing with his temperament.
Okay.
I saw it in that sense, you know.
Yes.
But you know, as you go with you're dealing with the priests, with the bishops, a high and a bye, a phone call here and there, you know. And the time goes by very quickly, very quickly. But you know, in view of what has happened and how it happened and where we're going and the different initiatives that he's begun just in a few months, you know, the diocese is, you know, strengthening itself. You know, we need to show some muscle, and we're hoping we're going to get some vocations now, so that we will be able to staff each parish very well.
Exactly. Let's go to Cameroon in particular. We have some priests here from Cameroon.
Yes.
Could you tell us about your experience with them, with some of them?
Well, after Monsignor Jerome came, and then I think Father Jacob was the next priest. He came and he was stationed at Holy Cross. I remember as soon as he came, I invited him. We went out to the agriculture fair and we talked and got to know him. And then the priest who had been the pastor here went back to the States. So I was asked to come out of retirement for a year. And I said, I'll do it, but I need help. So Father Jacob would come here every week. He'd either do the Saturday night Mass, or he would do the Sunday Mass. Sometimes he would do 2 Masses. During Lent,
Yes.
we always have 2 Masses. I would do 1, he would do 1. So for 10 months, he was a big help to me and to the parish. Then Father Neil was transferred from St. Thomas to St. Croix, and he became the pastor.
Okay.
And it was already in the wind about being a bishop. You heard about Father Neil's
Yes, Bishop of Barbados.
Barbados. He is a native of Barbados.
Oh.
In fact, I was the one that invited him to St. Thomas
Yes.
32 years ago.
Can you imagine?
So he came about the same time that Jerome Fugio came. And I invited Neil, because I met him in Trinidad, to teach in our school. What I wanted 2 strong spiritual men to teach the seniors religion. Because usually it was always women. I wanted some men involved. So he and another man came